Welcome to my channel. Today's story is not mine. All the videos shown are not mine. The names have been changed to protect the privacy of those involved. This is part 10 of the True Horror Stories. Let's begin. My name is Rachel. I live alone in a small cabin about 20 minutes outside of Missoula, Montana. I thought about checking the cameras I had set up around the property, but I didn't. I was hoping it was some kind of animal or something, so I could chase it off and be done with it. But there was no noise other than the knocks. And I knew if it were a wild animal, there would be some other sounds, right? And also, I wasn't expecting whoever or whatever it was to come back again. So I went back to bed. He didn't respond at all. He just stood there staring at my door. Still nothing. So I closed the door and backed away, pressing myself against the wall next to the door. I pulled out my phone and called 911. I work remotely, and in 2021, I was recovering from surgery, staying mostly indoors. I've told him several times, but he's being very uncooperative. Can someone drive by to make sure everything's okay? By now it was the end of November, and the temperatures at night were dropping into the 20s. Plus I was worried about my dogs. But after I hung up the phone, I went to my laptop and got to work contacting my realtor. I told him about the strange man who wouldn't leave my porch. They said that someone would be by in a couple of hours. That was fine. I went to my office and continued working. I told him I felt unsafe, and I wanted to sell my house as fast as possible. Motion sensors. I even installed a siren. Nothing worked. He still came every night, exact same time, exact same stare. I didn't want them getting spooked and running off in the middle of the night, so I stayed up and waited. I wasn't sure if it was real or if I was having a nightmare, and shot out of bed. I ran to the front door and peeked out. They arrived 45 minutes later, of course, and searched the area, but he was gone. He left no tracks in the snow, and there was no sign of him anywhere. I packed a bag and stayed with my brother for a few days. When I came home, the cabin was silent. It was peaceful. And he was grinning ear to ear when he looked through the window. I didn't hear anything that night, but I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room, watching the cameras. I rented my place out to someone who lasted only 3 nights. She called me hysterical and said there's someone knocking on the door. Always at 2:14, and the cops don't believe me. And don't forget to subscribe for more terrifying stories just like this one. Have you ever experienced something similar? Share your thoughts below. Nothing, he wasn't there. I checked the cameras and they weren't working. I must have bumped one of them when I got up, because the lights were out. I quickly fixed the camera and checked the recording. Sure enough, it captured his voice. Then I heard him again. This time he was closer. Let me in, please. I don't want to freeze. At 2:14 a.m., the knocking stopped. There was silence for maybe 10 seconds. Then I heard something else, something dragging across my door, slowly like fingernails. Then I heard him. It wasn't great quality, but it was enough for me to see that the guy hadn't walked up to the house. He just appeared. One frame, empty porch. Next frame, he's standing there. I checked the footage from the other nights, and it was the same thing. He just materialized on my porch. There were no footprints in the snow leading up to the house, and there was no motion detection registered on the cameras. Between 2:10 and 2:14 a.m. That was when I noticed he was wearing a baseball cap in the footage, and I realized he had a full-face tattoo. Then I was home alone on a Friday night, and I thought, maybe I should check it out. Who would be ringing my doorbell at 2:14 a.m.? I cautiously walked toward the door and peered outside. He was right at the door, this time leaning slightly, like he was listening through the wood. He was close enough that I could see his eyes. They were dark and soulless. Then he smiled and pressed his forehead against the glass. I screamed and slammed the door shut. I scrambled back and hid behind the couch. I didn't dare come out. I didn't dare look at the cameras. I huddled there until the sun came up. I stayed up until 3 a.m., playing computer games and drinking coffee, and waited. It started the first week of November. I was working late one night, and I heard 3 very distinct knocks on my front door. Not loud, not frantic, just calm. They watched it, though. They said, "We can't verify identity from this. Unless he breaks in, we can't do anything." Sorry, that was the 5th time I called them. Measured. I laughed and shook my head. I live way out in the woods. I jumped out of bed and ran to the front door. He was standing completely still at the edge of my front steps, not moving, not reacting to anything. He wore a long black coat, no gloves, no hat, not a scarf, nothing, and the snow was falling heavily. It was coming down so thick that it would have been impossible to tell how far away he was if I hadn't seen him just standing there at the top of my stairs. I flipped on the porch light immediately, and there he was. If it was a salesman or someone trying to rob me, they would have kicked the door in already. I figured maybe it was a fox or a tree branch, so I went back to work. It happened again the next night, and the next. At 2:14 a.m., I heard the 3 knocks again. It was so weird because every time I heard them, it was exactly the same time. But by the 4th night, I had to see what was going on. At exactly 2:14 a.m., I heard the 3 knocks again. It was a man. When I opened the door, I asked, "Can I help you?" He didn't answer. Do you need something?" I asked, thinking maybe he was deaf. "Yeah, hi. I have a guy here who won't leave my porch." "Okay," the operator said. "Someone will be right over." Of course, no one came that night. It took the police hours to respond to any call in my area. In the morning, I checked the security camera I'd installed last year for package theft. I called the police again and explained that I had more footage to share with them. When they arrived, I shared the video with them. By the 12th time, they stopped responding altogether. One dispatcher actually said, "Ma'am, maybe talk to a counselor. You sound stressed." I tried blocking him out, put floodlights in the front yard. Then one night, I woke up to the sound of the knocking. He was whispering my name. "Rachel, let me in. It's cold out here." Screamed. I called the police again. "He's dangerous," I told them. "You have to do something before he breaks in." "Ma'am, we've been over this. If he doesn't break in, we can't do anything." I showed them the video. They watched it and said they would keep it on file, but they would need more evidence. I was scared. On the 3rd night, I heard the doorbell ring once. I jumped and dropped my phone. I stared at the screen. Then I checked the footage. He had been smiling when he rang the bell. "It won't help you. No one will." "You know that now," he whispered. I moved out 2 days later, stayed with family. I told her to leave everything and never go back. Now the cabin is empty. For sale, but the cameras are still running. And I still get the alerts. Every single night at exactly 2:14 a.m., motion detected. Thank you for watching this chilling tale of suspense. Welcome to my channel. Today's scary story is from the series, and it's going to come from a viewer. I'd just gotten out of a bad relationship and wanted to be alone. Not isolated, just quiet. I'd just turned off the TV when I heard slow footsteps coming from the hallway. Not walking normally, more like dragging. I peeked through the peephole. No, that unit's empty. Been empty since October. You want me to check it out? But later that night, I noticed something else. From my door, I could hear it. At exactly 3:07 a.m., I woke up to a sound in my kitchen. It wasn't a crash. I looked up and saw a pair of feet in front of me, and a pair of black pants, then the man from the hallway. He was smiling. She vanished 3 weeks later. All they found inside her apartment was a single word scratched into the bathroom mirror. Stay. He picked the photo off the floor, looked at it, laughed, tucked it into his shirt, and leaned against the doorframe. Who are you? Oh, you know who I am. I was hoping you'd remember. We met earlier. I knocked on your door. I don't know you. Leave me alone. Come on, Anna. Don't play coy with me. We have so much to talk about. So much catching up to do. Get out of here before I call the cops. Ha! They won't help you, sweetheart. They never do. Not this time. They won't. He stepped past me and into the apartment. Don't touch anything. He looked back at me and smiled. I'm just getting started. I screamed and ran out of the apartment. It was a click, like a door latch. I lived alone. They checked 3B again. Still empty, still locked from the inside. They said the photo was probably a prank. They said there's no threat here. I didn't sleep for 3 days. 8. On the 4th night, I heard the dragging footsteps again. This time, they stopped in front of my door. There was no knock, just breathing. Then a whisper. I left the door open for you now. I moved out the next day. I grabbed a kitchen knife and walked slowly into the kitchen. The balcony door was wide open. Glass panes were rattling softly in the breeze. And on the floor, right in front of the door, were bare footprints. There are some exclusive perks. We'll see you next time. Wet, coming in, not going out. I stood there frozen. I ran to the hallway and tried to leave. My mind was screaming, "Get out of there, run!" But my feet wouldn't move. They were stuck to the spot, but then I saw it. Taped to the outside of my door was a Polaroid camera photo of me sleeping, taken from the window. The photo was slightly blurry. My face was half shadowed by my blanket, but the rest of the room was lit by the streetlight shining through the window. On the back it read, "You should have left when he opened the door." I screamed and kicked at the door. Why wouldn't it open? What was keeping me trapped? Then the doorknob turned. The door swung inward. I fell onto the floor and crawled to safety behind the washing machine. A faint whispering. It was hard to place. It sounded like voices, many voices, all speaking at once. The words were unintelligible, but the tone of the voices sent shivers down my spine. It sounded like a conversation that had no beginning or end, like a phone call that went on forever. It didn't sound angry. It sounded desperate. "Oh, okay," I said. "I just saw someone go inside last night. Anna. It was definitely a voice. It was definitely coming from 3B. I called the police. They came, knocked on the door. No one answered. They said they couldn't go in without a warrant unless there was an emergency. What if someone's squatting in there? We need proof. Call us if something happens." Then they left. I thought maybe they were fixing it up, but it looked like they moved right in. "Yeah, no, we don't have anyone living there right now." He shrugged and walked away. There was a man, maybe 40s, bald, thin, wearing a stained t-shirt, just standing in front of 3B. He was looking at the door as if trying to remember the code. He looked toward my apartment and then back at the door. He was trying to get in. He knocked 2 times and waited. Then he knocked 3 more times and waited. When he got no response, he pulled back and looked again at my apartment. Seemed to think about it for a long time. When he finally started walking away, I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. The building was old but cheap, and mostly filled with older tenants or students. My unit was on the 2nd floor, right at the corner. Directly across the hall from me was apartment 3B, always locked, always dark. For the first few weeks, I assumed no one lived there. She says this is a true story that happened in Dallas, Texas, in 2016. In 2016, I moved into a small apartment in Dallas, Texas. He shook his head like he was scolding himself. Then he turned and walked back to the door. This time, instead of knocking, he pressed his ear against the door as if listening for a response. After a moment, he backed away from the door and slowly reached into his pocket. He took out a key and unlocked the door. Without making any noise, he stepped inside and closed the door behind him. Then one night, I heard something. It was 2:11 a.m. When he was almost at the end of the hall, he stopped and looked back at 3B the next day. I asked the building manager, "Hey, does someone live in 3B now?" He frowned. That was 3 months ago. Told him I saw someone go inside. He just shrugged. Probably a squatter. I pressed my ear to the wall and I swear to God I heard my name. That night something did happen. Then I heard a voice. Looking for this, I called the police. They searched everything. No fingerprints. No forced entry. I never found out who he was. No one ever rented 3B. But the girl who moved in after me? Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please hit subscribe. And if you really like the video, please consider becoming a member. Welcome to the channel. Tonight's story comes from a viewer. My name is Jake. This happened to me and my sister in 2009, at our grandparents' cabin in northern Michigan. Used to go there every summer growing up. It was peaceful, surrounded by pine trees, with a beautiful lake just beyond the backyard. Maybe it was the heavy fog that blanketed the lake each morning, hanging like a dirty blanket. Or the unsettling chirps and buzzes of unseen insects during the day, especially at night. The sounds seemed to grow louder, more distorted. But that summer, something was off. On the second night, my sister Katie and I were sitting on the back deck around 8 p.m. Of course, I looked and I saw him. It was just starting to get dark. We were talking quietly when Katie suddenly stopped mid-sentence. It was deep in the woods, about 30 minutes from the nearest gas station. Just dark, sunken hollows. And his mouth wasn't smiling. The weirdest part, there was no sound. He just stared. Not breathing, not blinking, not moving. The next morning, the police came. They checked the area, found no tracks, no signs anyone had even approached the house. but we knew what we saw. I backed away slowly, and I did the one thing I shouldn't have done. 3 weeks later, my grandpa called and said something that chilled me to the bone. It's that man. I think he left something behind. It was torn open, unnaturally wide, almost like it had been cut to grin, taken from outside the bedroom window. We haven't been back since. We tried to convince ourselves it was nothing. Just our imaginations. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, and I swear, I hear click, click, click at the window. Not a knock. Not a rattle. Click, click, click. I peeked through the blinds. Maybe a shadow or a tree that looked human from a distance. But we both knew what we saw. For the first couple days, it was hard to put a finger on. And if you want more stories like this one, let me know in the comments. I love reading these kinds of creepy stories. I've got lots of other scary stories here on this channel.
Ow.
So check those out. And if you like the video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. Share this with a friend. Subscribe to the channel. Check out the podcast. Also follow our podcast on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. Till next time, don't forget, the woods are always watching, wearing a long coat. Couldn't see his face clearly, but he was definitely staring at us. He didn't move, didn't wave, didn't blink, just stood there, half hidden behind a tree. Then the third night we noticed something strange. We told our grandparents, but they shrugged it off. Probably just a hiker passing through. Except the next morning, he was still there. Same spot, same posture, same stillness. Only now he was closer, about 30 feet from the cabin. Jake, don't look. But there's someone at the tree line. A man, tall and skinny, standing perfectly still among the trees. Maybe 50 feet from the cabin. After a few minutes, we went inside and locked all the doors. We didn't sleep well that night. And when we woke up, he was gone. That night, around 2:30 a.m., I woke up to a soft clicking sound coming from the back door. He was standing right at the back door, face pressed to the glass. But now I could see it clearly. He had no eyes. In one hand, he held something. A piece of our doormat. I turned away for 1 second to grab my phone. When I turned back, he was gone. We left the cabin early that year. My grandparents stayed. They never saw him again. He found a photo nailed to the back of a tree, a picture of me and Katie sleeping. But every now and then in my apartment, far from those woods. Now, before we go, I want to say a big thank you to our Reddit user. You can find their content on Reddit